What's up, America? I'm here to talk to you today about a murder that took place on March 2nd, 1999. The murder victim was Walter Cook Jr. The murderer was Ocala Police Department Officer John Gilcher. Let me tell you what happened on that fatal day. Mr. Cook was on his way to pick up a relative from work. The police saw him stop to a house that they said was known for drugs, selling drugs. Mr. Cook went into the home and came back out. The police followed Mr. Cook and was trying to find a legal reason to stop him. So the legal reason that they found to stop him was the tail light was out on the car. They stopped Mr. Cook and wrote him a ticket about the tail light. They brought a police dog in, and the dog was alerted, or they alerted the dog. Anyway, Officer John Gilcher comes up. Before he arrived, Officer Smith had told Mr. Cook that it was fine, and he was getting ready to go. But Gilcher insisted that they search the car. Okay. Mr. Cook gave them permission to search the vehicle. Once they searched the vehicle, didn't find anything, then they asked to search his body. And he used his legal right and told them no. Mr. Cook got back into his vehicle and tried to crank the car up. Officer Smith reached in and they wrestled over the keys. After Mr. Cook would not turn loose the keys, Officer Smith pepper sprayed Mr. Cook. John Gilcher was leaning through the car on the passenger side, which had a passenger in it, by the way, Maria Presley, who was Mr. Cook's girlfriend, and he had pulled his firearm on Mr. Cook. He then ran around to the front of the vehicle, stood in front of the vehicle. Mr. Cook's vision is now no longer perfect because he's been pepper sprayed. So Mr. Cook hit the gas in an attempt to get away. Gilcher claims that the vehicle had become a weapon, so he fired a shot into the front windshield of the car, which hit Mr. Cook in the wrist. Mr. Gilcher was never ever able to produce any type of injuries where the car supposedly bumped him or hit him. Gilcher then, once Mr. Cook had taken off, Gilcher now moved to the side of the car. He's no longer in harm's danger now. The car is no longer a weapon or a threat. Gilcher fired 3 shots into the car. 2 of them were the fatal ones that killed Mr. Cook. This is John Gilcher. John Gilcher also killed a black person, male, in Tallahassee, Florida before he even became an Ocala Police Department officer. A lot of the officers knew that Gilcher was going to be a problem because he was a hothead. Now, Gilcher lied to the FDLE agents and told them that he fired all 4 shots from the front of the car, which was a lie. Now, what we have here is a situation where Gilcher was trigger happy. Now, they had an all-white grand jury. 2 of the jurors that were black were excused for crazy reasons. One, the doctor said that one couldn't participate. The other reason was, for the next juror, was that she couldn't find anybody to run her daycare. So this all-white jury found John Gilcher not guilty. But they did say he could have, found another way to handle the situation. There were 2 judges on the case, assigned to the case, before the final judge took the case. They didn't want any part of it, so they cited conflict of interest. Now, the Ocala Police Department fired John Gilcher for excessive use of force. Now, let me tell you what they did, though, in their part of the cover-up. The Ocala Police Department didn't put anything in John Gilcher's file about the Walter Cook shooting. So, John Gilcher then went and got a job with the Florida Highway Patrol, which is no longer a Florida Highway Patrolman. He was fired or released for the gun. He has a habit of wanting to pull his gun on black males. Don't know what it is. I guess he got a thing about black males. But what happened was, Brad King, State's Attorney's Office, they didn't handle this situation right, and they know they didn't. I just don't understand why the jury could not find him guilty of murder. Listen to me again. Once he was out of harm's way, he had no reason to shoot in the vehicle. I was very reckless because Miss Presley that was in the car, his girlfriend, she could have been shot also. The police department laid her on the ground, told her she better not say anything about what she saw that night. There were several witnesses, John Henry Johnson, for example, and his sister. John Henry shouted to the police and told them, look, don't you put anything on him, don't you put anything in the car, I'm watching him. A couple of months later, as a matter of fact, 1 month later, Maria Presley was arrested and charged with sale and possession of cocaine. She had several charges in that category, and they were all trumped up charges. John Henry Johnson, he ended up in jail on some charges. They had threatened to take Maria Presley's children, and they did. They threatened to take John Henry's sister's children. I don't think they did so, but she had some housing code violations, and they did, violate her on those. The thing is, why didn't the Ocala Police Department put in John Gilcher's file about the Walter Cook Jr. incident? Why? Because they were a part of this cover-up also. Brad King, the 5th Judicial Circuit State's Attorney's Office here in Ocala, Florida, is very racist. This is just one of many situations. But now we're presently talking to a law firm in Tallahassee, Florida, civil rights attorneys, about this Walter Cook Jr. situation. Walter Cook Jr. was born in 1971. He was very young when he died. And he left 2 kids here. Ironically, Mr. Cook's son was born on the day that Mr. Cook was killed. Not in the same year, but the same birthday. So now every time his birthday rolls around, he really can't celebrate his birthday because it's also the day that his father was murdered. Regardless, if Walter Cook Jr. had drugs in the car, or if he didn't, Gilcher had no reason to shoot, especially after the vehicle had bypassed him. He shot him through the front passenger window. He also shot him through the back passenger window. Gilcher's intention was to kill, murder Walter Cook Jr. Mr. Gilcher had to be told to put his weapon down after he had killed Mr. Cook, because he was still holding his weapon, ready to unload some more in Walter Cook Jr.'s body. Walter Cook Jr. was affectionately known to us and his friends as Jamie. This was one of the sweetest guys you ever wanted to meet. Very well liked, even to this day. Something needs to be done about John Gilcher getting away with murder, because it was a murder. So what we're trying to do now is let the public and let the world know what went on that night, what goes on here in Ocala, involving the Ocala Police Department and the 5th Judicial Circuit State's Attorney's Office, which Brad King heads. I sure do wish that we can get some justice for Walter Cook Jr. so he can rest in peace. Because I'm telling you again, it was murder. The 3 bullets came from the side and the back passenger window. Why? The first shot came in the front. Now, police chief, who was then deputy chief of police 3 years ago, when I spoke with him, Greg Graham, he says that I train all my officers to never stand or walk in front of a vehicle. I believe that. So why did Gilcher run in front of the vehicle? Why didn't Gilcher shoot the tires out? Why did Gilcher run in front of that vehicle and start shooting? And then once the vehicle had passed him, he still was unloading his gun until he killed Walter Cook Jr. America, this kind of thing goes on here all the time concerning black people. It's no justice at all. John Gilcher, where are you at now? I bet you're somewhere now probably thinking of how you're going to kill another black man. Again, this is John Gilcher, receiving an award, and he's with the Florida Highway Patrol. You know what? It kind of reminds me of the last verse of Tupac Shakur's hit song, I Wonder If Heaven's Got a Ghetto. He says, a cop doesn't give a damn about a Negro. Pull a trigger, kill a brother, and he's a hero. I don't know. I just know one thing. We all miss Walter Cook Jr. So a lot of people that thought they knew the story, you don't. And now you didn't, and now you do. Walter Cook Jr. was murdered. You've got to understand that part. Regardless of what the situation was, there was no need for Gilcher to fire those extra shots into that car and from where he fired them from. Walter Cook Jr. is missed so dearly by his mother. Very, very deeply. It was her only son. Can you imagine losing your only son? America, something needs to be done. Something needs to be done about this, no matter if it did happen in 1999. Justice can come at any time. Justice needs to come. Because Walter Cook Jr. was murdered. I don't know. Again, all I can say is this. No justice, no RIP.